Hey folks, how you all doing? So today's the third installment of my Bob Dylan Studio Rankings set of videos. I've already done the 1960s, where I've ranked the 9 albums he released in the 1960s, plus the 10 or 11 albums, whatever it was, in the 1970s, or the other way around, vice versa. Yeah, so watch those two videos first, come back to this one, and we'll go 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and then the 20s after that. So what I'm actually doing, I'm ranking them decade by decade, because I cannot really take the time to rank all 40 of his studio albums in one video. That is just a mammoth task. I've tried it with Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. There's about 23 albums there all up, including Birthday Party. It's a mammoth task. It is really too much for one video. That's why I've split it. So I'll go with my least favourite to favourite from each period, starting off now with number 11, because he released 11 albums during the 80s and 90s period. So at number 11 on my list, I have Empire Burlesque. Very forgettable songs on here. Sounds like he'd run out of ideas and enthusiasm. It was a very overall non-inspiring decade, the 1980s, for Bob Dylan. Very 1980s production too, which makes this sound worse than what it probably could have been had it have been made in another decade. Tight Connection to My Heart was an okay single. Emotionally Yours isn't a bad song, but overall just very, very forgettable. 3 out of 10 for me. Number 10 on my list, I've got Under a Red Sky. A lot of people like this album. I don't like it. That's fine. If you love it, great, good stuff. Someone's got to love it, the same as any other album, I guess. Just goes, in my opinion, it goes to prove how bad this album is. When your lead-off track on an album should be one that gets you into an album, but when it's the abysmal Wiggle Wiggle being the lead-off track, it just, your heart just sinks straight away, and it really doesn't lift. No matter what he could have done after Wiggle Wiggle on this album, just couldn't have lifted this album. It just doesn't improve from there. There's just really yeah, I'm just trying to look here. There's nothing really that stands out on here as a song. Yeah, just nothing. Another 3 out of 10 album for me. Number 9 on my list, we go to Oh Mercy. I really like the album cover on this. I don't know if that's artwork that Bob actually painted himself, did he? If you know, leave it in the comments section below. Lots of political, social commentary on this album with biting sarcasm. Better than expected, considering most of his work from that period in the 1980s, early 1990s. But yeah, Political World, that is a really, really good song. Not a great song, just a really, really good song. Everything is Broken, another really good song. Man in the Long Black Coat, good song. Disease of Conceit, good song. It's just average. But other than them songs, it's just an average Bob Dylan album. It might be a great album if another artist had recorded it, but it's average by Bob Dylan standards. 5 out of 10. Number 8 on my list, from the 1980s and 90s periods by Bob Dylan. We have World Gone Wrong, acoustic covers album of old folk tunes. It's actually very dark, very gothic in nature. The themes are very tragic in these songs. He's picked these songs deliberately. Sounds very much like something Nick Cave could have done, with that dark gothic death type stuff. But yeah, it's not bad for a covers album. 5.5 out of 10. Number 7 on my list, we have another covers album. This was the covers album that preceded World Gone Wrong, Good As I've Been to You. Traditional folk songs on here, nothing bad, except maybe the 6-minute version of Froggy Went to Courting, which is just absolutely abysmal. But other than that, just a average little covers album, nice and innocent, nothing outstanding. As I said, it's just a pleasant listen when you do get to it. 5.5 out of 10. Number 6 on my list, of ranking Bob Dylan's albums from the 1980s and 90s, we go to Shot of Love. This was his third album in a trilogy of evangelical, Christian / preachy religious albums. Most people don't really like this album. It outstayed his Christian welcome at this stage after 2 previous albums in a row. The songs are okay, they're just not as good as the songs on Saved, and definitely not anywhere near the same class of songs that are on Slow Train Coming. However, the songs are pretty good. They do pass the grade. Shot of Love, the title track, is okay. Property of Jesus is another good song. Dead Man, Trouble, and Every Grain of Sand. Good songs, just not as good as the other Christian albums he released. And I do like the cover album there. It's that pop art type cover. 6 out of 10. Next up, Knocked Out Loaded, solid album from the late 1980s. I guess you'd call it a diamond in a sewer, for want of a better word. All decent songs on here, but nothing comes close to the genius of track 6, Brownsville Girl, which is 11 minutes long. This album would have been a 6 out of 10 album had it not been for Brownsville Girl. That track comes in at a 10 out of 10, which lifts the album overall to a 7.5 out of 10. If you've never heard Brownsville Girl, go and give it a listen. It's an absolute masterclass of songwriting by Bob Dylan. It is my second favourite Bob Dylan song of all time. So you are Knocked Out Loaded, number 5 on my list, 7.5 out of 10. At number 4 on my list of Bob Dylan albums from the 1980s and 90s, we go to Saved. It's his second religious preachy Christianity, evangelical, religious album. Very good. Not quite as good as Slow Train Coming. Definitely better than Shot of Love. And the album cover, what a great piece of artwork that is. So yeah, really good album. Nothing really stands out. They're all better than average songs, I would say. Most of the songs would come in at like 7.5 out of 10, so that's pretty much where this album sits, 7.5 out of 10. Number 3 on my list, we go to Down in the Groove. I remember buying this when it first got released, and I was so disappointed by it. It just didn't do anything for me. I think I liked Silvio, which was the single at the time, and I just didn't like anything else on the album. But then during the COVID lockdowns, I started listening to this album more and more, because I realised while we're sitting at home doing nothing, I'd try and listen to some albums that I wasn't overly keen on and see if I could get to like them. And this album's come out really well. It would probably be a mid-range album if I ranked all 40 of his albums, so somewhere about 20-ish, I guess. But for the 1980s and 90s, this one comes out at number 3. There's some really good songs on here. There's a cover of Roxy Music's Let's Stick Together. Ugliest Girl in the World. That's a bit sort of quirky, I guess. It's probably the weakest song on here. Shenandoah's pretty good. 90 Miles an Hour Down the Dead End Street. And Death Is Not the End. From memory, Nick Cave covered that somewhere along the line. I don't know whether it's on his B-Sides and Rarities box set now or a studio album. I can't think. But yeah, this is just a really good album. It's really grown on me. It comes in at 7.5 out of 10. So at number 2 in my rankings of the 80s and 90s albums by Bob Dylan, we go to Time Out of Mind. This was his last album release of the 1990s. It brought about a huge resurgence in his career, both critically and commercially. That's what the word I was looking for, commercially. Critically acclaimed. Everyone loved it. All the critics loved it. It actually charted higher than most of his previous albums over the last 10-15 years, I guess, since the late 1970s. It's the start of his bluesy type sound with the onset of the raspy aged vocals. Excellent material here. Some excellent material. The rest of it is really good. A decent way to emerge from an average period of music. So best songs on here, Make You Feel My Love. Adele covered that on her debut album 19. That was a single for Adele. She does a brilliant version of it, but Bob Dylan's original is on here. Not Dark Yet, that's another song that a lot of people would know. Dirt Road Blues, Million Miles, Trying to Get to Heaven. This is just a really, really good album at a time when Bob Dylan needed to get back in the public eye before he faded into obscurity, and he sure did with that album. 8 out of 10. Which means my favourite album of that period, 1980s to 90s, Dylan fans are going to know this. This has fans divided, infidels. A lot of people hate this album. A lot of people think it's an average Dylan album, and some just think it's great. I think it's great. Lyrics are sheer poetry here. They're biting. There's venom spitting vocals with a backbeat, and Mark Knopfler's, I guess, wailing guitar. That might be a way to put it. It's got the Mark Knopfler sound. Mark Knopfler produced it. I believe they fell out after this album was finished. Bob Dylan didn't like the way Mark Knopfler produced it and finished it. I think it's absolutely brilliant. Contains arguably two of his finest, Bob Dylan's finest love songs here. Sweetheart Like You and Don't Fall Apart on Me Tonight. Sheer genius. You just can't. Brilliant love songs from Bob Dylan, that's all I can say. Go and listen to them after this video on YouTube. Sweetheart Like You and Don't Fall Apart on Me Tonight. The lyrics here and his singing is first class, crystal clear production. This is as good as anything, in my opinion, from his classic years of the 60s and 70s. 9.5 out of 10. This album would rate top 2 or 3, maybe 4 from his entire career for me. Great stuff. 9.5 out of 10. Infidels. Anyway, guys, that is the end of the period and the third video from my installment of ranking Bob Dylan's studio albums. We have one more installment to go. That is 2000 to 2020. I won't be doing his most recent release because that was only released like a year ago, and I haven't had time to listen to that enough to include that on here. So we'll stop with Rough and Rowdy Ways. I think that was the last one from 2020. Other than that, yep, just leave your comments in the comments section below. If you think I've got any of these albums in a wrong order, let me know. I'm more than happy to listen to other people's opinions, the same as you obviously have with mine here. If you think my description of an album is wrong, let me know. Let me know. It's nice to hear what people think of other albums. Anyway, guys, stay safe, take care. All for now. Catch you around. See you in the next installment. Bye, folks.